Hey guys, welcome back. My name's LT, and if you're new to this channel, we basically build custom and high performance trucks both for myself and for clients. I got a small shop that I basically run out of my home garage, but hopefully a little bit later on this year, we're going to get ourselves into an actual shop building. Now, the main content of today's upload is going to be showing you the next client build that we have. It's a Jeep, and we're going to be LS swapping it. But before we get to that, just a couple of quick updates I wanted to share. First of all, if you guys remember Ugly Truck, the 2000 Silverado 8.1 big block turbo truck, I just got some new tires in for it right there. And if you know anything about car people like myself, you know that I have a certain obligation to properly dispose of the old tires in an environmentally friendly manner. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that in an upcoming upload. That'll be a whole lot of fun. And then another quick update on the merch website, tolmanperformance.com. Head on over there to check it out. We are constantly making tweaks and changes to it, and we did actually just get an email from the vendor that we had these tie-dye hoodies, and I actually did order one just actually a bit ago. They're kind of look like this right here. This one's kind of folded up, but anyway, we had these Tolman Performance tie-dye hoodies, and they actually said that they're discontinuing that line of hoodies. So we are going to be coming up with a newer one. Some of you guys have actually messaged me saying you prefer the, just traditional print rather than the tie-dye. So we'll look into that as well. Also, we've got these long sleeve thin hoodies, which are really nice because it's kind of like the same material as a t-shirt. So to me, I really like them because they're great for the kind of springtime when it's warming up. And also, these do fit a little bit on the long side rather, which is perfect for me because I'm a little bit taller. Anyhow, last shop update. This is something that's pretty insignificant, but to me, I was really happy to finally get it done. I did buy a new cart for my TIG welder because for years it had been sitting just under my welding bench, and it got really dirty and nasty, and my welding cylinder was just kind of sitting up against the wall, which is totally not safe. So anyway, I went over to Harbor Freight. I grabbed this one. It's their 350-pound welding cart. It's, I think, the bigger one that they make there, and it is a bolt together design, but I did take a little bit of extra time and I added some reinforcements, and I have no doubt that now it's going to last a very long time, and it fits perfectly for my machine. So here it is. Here's kind of what it looks like. It is a bolt together design like I mentioned, but basically every seam where it's bolted together, like right down here, you can kind of see the bolt. I just ground away the paint and I welded every single seam on both sides, front and back, and then I added some extra reinforcements. There's one piece of strap I added that goes in the diagonal right there, and then I also added an X-brace on the front. That way, whenever you're pushing it around, it's super rigid. I welded the handles onto the body of the cart as well. And then finally, the one thing that actually got me more excited about this cart than anything is it has the little holders for the TIG rod. There's 4 holes in here. These inner ones are a little bit smaller. They work with a smaller size tube. I've actually got 3 of the large ones, so I did just zip tie the final large filler tube on the back there. But I'm just super excited that finally I have a spot for my TIG machine to roll around on, and it'll keep it a lot cleaner, hopefully. So anyway, let's get on to the rest of the upload. So you probably saw in the thumbnail that this is a 2-door 98 Cherokee XJ, and I've always loved this body style. And I love the 2 doors. I think it has a nice sporty look, and it kind of reminds me of, like, the old school Blazers and the 2-door Tahoe. So it's kind of a cool vehicle to start a build from. And first of all, the owner of this truck came all the way from Texas, so I got to give a huge shout out and thanks to Jimmy for driving all the way up here, because I'm honored that he drove this far to have me do his engine swap, when I'm sure there's plenty of other qualified people down there in Texas, but he made the drive, so I'm super grateful, and it's some awesome content that we get to show you guys. So here's a rundown on this 98 Jeep. So obviously he's done a lot of work already to kind of prepare for some off-road type stuff. Is first of all riding on a 37-inch tire. These, let's see, it's a Patagonia MT, and it's on a 17-inch aluminum beadlock wheel. And then as far as suspension goes, it's sitting on a Rusty's long arm kit. So it's got the radius arms up front, still has a coil spring and just your traditional shock. And then out back, it's on a leaf spring. As far as axles go, he has Dynatrac 60s, both on the rear and up there in the front as well. And I believe he said he's got 456s and electric lockers on both sides. So as far as the running gear is concerned, this thing is pretty stout. It has a nice ride height to it. He also has these Rusty's, I don't know, body armor, whatever you want to call it, body armor or flares. Real sturdy. That looks like, it's like 1/8 or 3/16 metal. It looks really cool. And on the front, let's see, he's got some sway bar disconnects, a PSC hydraulic steering assist, So overall, I mean, this is a pretty beefy setup. It's going to be really nice to get some extra power under the hood of this thing. And as far as under the hood, let's see if I can open this one-handed. He already went through the effort of, oh man, I'm struggling here. That's a heavy hood for a Jeep. He already went through the effort of removing the stock drivetrain, but he did leave all the wiring and everything is labeled. So we shouldn't have any problem getting that big LS under the hood. So as soon as we unloaded the Jeep off the trailer, I took a picture of it and I posted it up on Facebook, Instagram, and on my YouTube story, I think they call it right here, which, by the way, if you haven't already, you ought to go follow me on all those platforms for some behind the scenes photos and stuff. But anyway, when I first did post a picture of it, a lot of you guys were commenting about what engine you thought I ought to swap in here. And my favorite one was the big block, because I kind of have been known, I guess, to be a big block guy, because we got the 7.4 Vortec in the Suburban, then we've got the 8.1 in the ugly truck. So I do really like the big blocks. I love that massive amount of torque that they make. And it would be an awesome engine to swap into any vehicle, especially a big off-road vehicle with big heavy wheels and tires on it. But that displacement of a big block does come at a price, and that price is just how much space and weight it physically takes up. I think off the top of my head that 8.1 Vortec is iron block, iron heads. I think that's right around 700 or 750 pounds. So that's a lot of weight, and just the space it takes up is massive in what's already going to be a pretty tight engine bay. So a big block, as cool as it would be, it just doesn't make sense. What does make sense to make more horsepower in a reliable package that's fairly lightweight, is compact, there's a ton of aftermarket support, it's the LS engine. I mean, I'm not for LS swapping everything. I know they're super popular and they're a great engine, but in this application, it actually does make a lot of sense. Now, LS, that's just obviously the designation of a family of engines, and it's just kind of the nickname now, LS, because there's a lot of them that don't actually start with LS as the RPO code. But anyway, they started back in the late 90s rather. The 97 Corvette, I believe, was the first year that got the LS1. And after that, there's probably 24 different designations of different quote-unquote LS engines. But the choice for most swappers is actually the truck stuff. I believe there's the LR4 4.8, the LM753, the LQ4 6-liter, the LQ9 6-liter, and there's a dozen other after that. So those are just the kind of the first generation with the 24-tooth crank wheel on them. And the engine that the owner provided was right here. This is a 2006 LQ4 6-liter, and I believe the base engine, obviously we have some changes on it, but the base LQ4, if I'm not mistaken, and if my memory holds true, is somewhere around 330 horsepower. Its bigger brother, the LQ9, high compression engine, made I think 360, 365 horsepower. But they only use those in like the Silverado SS, the Escalades, some of the Denali's, and they're a sought after engine, and they do command a lot higher price on the used market. So anyway, the 6-liter LQ4 is really a great engine to start with. Iron block, aluminum heads, and like I mentioned, the owner has provided some upgrades, mainly just to get this to actually fit in the Jeep. First of all, the obvious difference that you'll notice is the intake. This is a car intake, it's from an LS6, and the one reason why we had to do this, well, that's because of the hood height. So the LS6 intake is just a little bit taller than the valve covers, where the truck intake, I mean, that sucker sits way up here and there's just no way to make it clear the hood. I think I've seen someone do it, but you got to cut a hole in the hood, which just is not cool. Headers, these are from Novak Conversions. That's the company that makes the motor mounts that we're going to be installing, that will actually allow this package to fit underneath the hood of an XJ Cherokee. So Novak conversion headers, LS6 car intake. It does have an aftermarket fuel rail. I think he said the original one was like rusted out or something. I think he told me these are the stock truck injectors, but they do have a spacer on there. Stock LQ4 truck coils. As far as the accessory drive on the front goes, this is from LS Simple, and it moves everything kind of up and out. That way we can clear the frame rails, which are a little bit narrow. Let's see, it looks like it's got a Holley throttle body on there. This is I believe an LS3 car water pump. What else we got? Oh, cam swap. He did tell me that he has a cam that's been put in this one. Other than that, the bottom end is stock, but it has a higher performance cam in it. And I know he told me the cam specs, but I can't remember them. I think we're shooting for somewhere right around 400 horsepower, and we probably won't have any problems hitting that. And then the stock 4-liter that was under the hood of this Jeep, I'm not entirely positive, but I think they make less than 200 horsepower, like maybe 190, somewhere around there. So we're going from, just for round numbers sake, let's say we're going from 200 to 400 horsepower and probably about the same torque. I mean, that's going to be a huge improvement over that little 4-liter. And just when it comes to getting up the trail, getting up a hill, or even just maintaining speed on the highway with big heavy wheels and tires and stuff like that, that extra 200 horsepower is going to make a world of difference. So I can't wait to get it in. I can't wait to hear this thing, and I can't wait to get it on the road. As far as the rest of the drivetrain goes, we've got ourselves a 4L60 transmission that's completely gone through, and I've got a million parts in the back of this thing, and I'm going to get those out here in just a second, and we'll go over everything. 4L60 transmission, and then the transfer case, we're going to be going with an MP231. This is actually the original transfer case that came with the Jeep. It does have a slip yoke eliminator on the back, and we are going to have to pop it apart and do a input shaft conversion, I believe. And then he's got this advanced adapter, which will allow us to mount this onto the back of the 4L60. Now, when it comes to transmissions, there's two basic options for this generation of engine. You've got the 4L60 and the 4L80. The 4L80 is the one that I run in both my big block trucks, and it's a much stronger transmission, but it actually, the 4L80 does have some disadvantages over the 4L60. The 4L60 makes perfect sense for this vehicle because number one, it's a little bit lighter vehicle. Number two, 400 horsepower isn't really all that much for a properly built 4L60. And number three, the one reason why the 4L60 is way superior to the 4L80 for a vehicle like this is the gear ratios. A 4L60 has a first gear of like 317, 320, somewhere in there to 1, where the 4L80 is like, I think, 248 to 1. So first gear, we're just looking for a crawl ratio, and the 4L80 is definitely not as ideal as a 4L60. And 4L60 has a better overdrive ratio for lower RPMs when cruising down the highway, which will definitely help to offset the 456s that are in the axles. Alright, I got everything unboxed and kind of laid out, so let's just hop right into it and go over all the parts that you're going to need, or I think this is all the parts that you're going to need to swap an LS into an XJ Cherokee. So let's start right off with getting the thing actually mounted into the chassis, because usually on any engine swap, that's one of the biggest hurdles that you have to overcome right off the bat. And like I said, we're going to be using products from Novak Conversions, I believe they're called, and they're the ones that provided this whole mount system. I'm pretty sure, I think this is part of the Novak, but that might be part of the advanced adapters kit, but I'm not sure. We'll come back to that. So the motor mounts together, they look kind of like this. There's two halves. There's the first part, this kind of bolts onto the frame in place of the Cherokee mounts. And then there's the engine side adapter, which looks just like this, bolts onto the block. There's a rubber isolator to prevent any vibrations and all that good stuff from transferring into the chassis. So there's two sides of each, obviously, all the hardware included. I'm pretty sure this is part of the Novak, but this actually might be part of the advanced adapters kit, but basically that's just the transmission mount. So between all that, we should be able to get the engine installed into the chassis. Now, transmission, let's kind of circle over here for a second. This is a Monster 4L60, and I think he said they had this built to hold somewhere around 500 horsepower or so. It does come with a torque converter, and he provided me a stock, looks to be a stock flex plate. Now, whenever you're bolting a 4L60 to an LS engine, there's a couple of different ways that things can go together. Now you notice back here, this little guy, this is a 0.400 inch crank spacer that's used when you're attaching a 4L80 to an LS. Now, just about every LQ4 that had an automatic transmission probably had a 4L80, so we are going to have to lose this spacer, but we have the appropriate 4L60 dished flex plate, so we're not going to have any sort of an adapter like you would with a 4L80. So remove the spacer, dished flex plate, converter, bolts the whole package together, so that'll handle the transmission side of things. To get the transfer case, the NP231 Jeep transfer case bolted to that transmission, this is where the advanced adapters kit comes into play. So there's a two-part adapter housing. This one I think bolts up to the 4L60. This one bolts up to the NP231, and they kind of mate there in the middle just like that. And then so they can physically bolt together with the gears, we have this 231 input shaft, so I'll have to pop the transfer case apart and put this inside. So that's the appropriate spline count to mate up to the output shaft on the 4L60. And finally, I haven't read the instructions yet, but they also provide this tone wheel, which I'm sure is just so the 4L60 or the speed sensor that the 4L60 and GM computer are looking for will be able to mate up. I'm pretty sure that's just a 40-tooth speed sensor there. So anyway, that's how the drivetrain is going to all bolt together. In terms of wiring and what's going to control this whole project, right over here we got ourselves a Terminator X Max ECU and a wiring harness. So these are pretty sophisticated computers. They'll do just about anything you want and then some. Of course, it comes with a wideband O2 sensor, all the harnesses that you need for the injectors, the coils, and all that good stuff. Power harness over there. So Terminator X Max is going to be providing the engine control. Fluid, we've got ourselves a trans cooler over there. He gave me a whole bunch of different AN lines and fittings and stuff that'll handle both the fuel lines and the trans cooler lines. We've got a few odds and ends for fluid stuff. We've got a dipstick for the transmission and for the engine. Let's see, we got a starter exhaust stuff over here. We've got ourselves a Y-pipe, high flow catalytic converter. Let's see, that's more AN line and stuff. I'm not sure which one goes to trans and which one goes to fuel, but we've got plenty of lines there. A little bit of miscellaneous hardware. Looks like we've got starter bolts, flex plate bolts, and then that's probably bell housing to engine. So this, for the most part, is everything that you're going to need. One last thing, cooling. These XJs have a pretty small grill, as you can see. That's a pretty small opening there, so we've got ourselves a radiator. This is also from Novak, and it's got a really thick core on it. It's specifically for LS swapping the Jeep. And these pins down here, I'm pretty sure that bolts right into the, or sets right into the factory location. No bolts, obviously. It does have 3 cooling fans on there, and so that should be able to keep that engine pretty cool. Luckily, it also does have the 2 ports here. These are for either a temp sender or a steam port return for the LS. It's got the small LS style hose fittings right there. So I think that's the last major piece of the puzzle. Overall, lots of parts here, but it should be a pretty simple conversion. Around the back, there's a few more odds and ends that are still left inside. I'm just kind of running out of space where to stack everything. These 2 big boxes over here, both the exhaust kits. We've got a 2.5 and a 3-inch stainless builder's kit. And I'm kind of going to do the exhaust in a similar way that I just did the F-150. So off the headers, 2.5 is going to use the Y-pipe down there into a single 3-inch cat. Out of the single 3-inch cat, we're going to go into this big muffler right here. MagnaFlow, obviously 24 inches long. It'll bring a lot of the noise down, but still give us a nice rumble. And a few other odds and ends. Let's see, we've got a inline hose radiator cap adapter with the radiator cap over here. Electric cooling fan harness. I might use some of this for the relays and stuff, but in terms of fan control, this does come with a sender, but we're going to rely on the Terminator to tell the fans when to turn on. So it'll just be a blend probably of the harness that comes with that and this harness here. We got some Tom Woods drive shafts. These are what were in there before, and they may work, they may not. I'm not sure how much longer or shorter this 4L60 231 combo is going to be from the 4-liter. I don't even know what transmission the 4-liter had, but it had the 231. So we maybe have to get different drive shafts. Maybe there's enough length in the slip yoke for it to still work. I guess we'll just find out when we cross that bridge. In the front seat here, we've got a few, oh, that's right, you told me the door won't open. Anyway, in the front seat, there are just a few last odds and ends. One of the Corvette style fuel filter regulator deals. There's a few other hose fittings for the fuel system. And then finally, an oil filter and some engine oil and stuff like that. So Overall, that's all the parts that I've been provided, and hopefully that's everything we'll need. I'm sure with every engine swap project, there's always some last minute fittings or doodads or nuts and bolts that we're gonna have to pick up, but for the most part, that's what you need to LS swap an XJ Cherokee. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this upload. This was mainly just an overview of the project to come. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like this video. Also head on over to tolmanperformance.com to grab some cool merch, because it definitely helps support the channel and helps do things like this, get new tires so we can properly dispose of them. Now, right now it is Friday afternoon, so I'm going to get this video edited. I'll get it uploaded. It'll probably go live for you guys sometime on Sunday. But like I said, today's Friday, tomorrow is Saturday, and it's going to be really sunny out. It's a nice day. So for my weekend, I'm planning on getting the ugly truck out, and we're going to maybe see if we can't get rid of those tires that are on the back in a fun and exciting way. And I will record it, and you guys will get to see it in a coming upload. So get out there, enjoy your weekend. I guess if this is Sunday, that means you're going to go back to work on Monday. But anyway, get out in your garage, enjoy some wrenching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you guys, and I'll catch you on the next upload.